poet and a composer, very talented person. She wrote some charagans and she composed the music for them. One of her best charagans is called Antsink Niviriak Siruin Christosi, people dedicated to the love of Christ. This is a charagan that she composed for Pripsime, Gayane, Nunya, and Manya, who were martyred in Armenia for their Christian faith. Okay. There are two Ustiane Sargavaks mentioned in Armenian sources. One lived in the 5th century, and she was the one who worked as a scribe and copied Yerishe's book, The Battle of Avarar. There's another Ustiane who lived in the 17th century, and she wrote a devotional book that contained a series of prayers. In the 12th century, some Armenian clergymen voiced opposition to the practice of ordaining women deacons. The most notable ones were Bishop Boros Daronatsi and Nerses Lampronazi. Nerses Lampronazi was from Lampron, which is in Cilicia. And Bishop Boros Daronatsi was from the region of Mush. These two leading clergymen, for the first time in the 12th century, voiced their opposition to the practice of ordaining women deacons. But the interesting thing is that when Nerses Lampronazi was 37 years old, his two sisters, Susanna and Dalita, became deacons. Became ordained deacons. Now, the continuation of the practice of ordaining women deacons had its supporters. The most notable supporters were Mkhitar Ghosh. Mkhitar Ghosh was a bishop. He was a scholar. He wrote a book entitled Clerical Orders, and in it he defends the practice of ordaining women deacons. And he says in his book that ordaining women deacons was not an invention of the Armenian Church. He gives biblical references. He cites Romans chapter 16, verse 16, and verses 1 and 2, where Paul says, I present to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church. So here we have, during the Apostle Paul's ministry, there was a woman deacon in Greece called Phoebe, and she was a deacon, and the Apostle Paul recommended her. Then in Acts chapter 18, Paul asked a woman, Priscilla, to teach somebody called Apollos. Now Apollos was a Jew from Alexandria who converted to Christianity. He was an eloquent speaker, very learned, but he didn't know the full gospel. His biblical knowledge was deficient. And the Apostle Paul realized that he could be a good preacher, but he had to be taught the full gospel. So he asked Priscilla to teach him. A woman was asked to teach a man, and Apollos did not object to being taught by a woman. So Mkhitar Ghosh, who was a bishop, is answering the charges of Bishop Boros Daronatsi and Nerses Lampronazi by citing biblical examples. And then he says in Romans chapter 16, verse 7, we have another woman, Junia, who is called an apostle. The only woman who was given the title of apostle was Junia. And a Greek theologian called Chrysostom mentions Junia, and he says this woman was worthy to be called an apostle. So Chrysostom is acclaimed as a saint in the Greek church, and he was an eloquent preacher and a great theologian. His works are studied even to this day. His sermons are just fabulous. Then Sampat Sparabet in the 13th century. He was the brother of King Hetum of Cilicia. He was a military commander, but he was also a judge and a scholar. And he defended the practice of ordaining women deacons. Then Stepanos Orpelian, he was a bishop of Sunik in Armenia. The Sunik region is very important. Vasak was from Sunik. Yes. And Bishop Stepanos Orpelian lived in the 13th century, and he was bishop of Sunik. And he defended the practice of ordaining women. There were some people who wanted the women deacons to be placed under the authority of male deacons. And Bishop Stepanos Orpelian said no. Women deacons must be placed under the authority of the priests, not the male deacons. Moses Tatevatsi became a Catholicos in 1629, Catholicos of all Armenians. He encouraged women deacons to preach the gospel. And the number of women deacons increased greatly during his time. And Catholicos Moses Tatevatsi, don't confuse him with a Grigor Tatevatsi. There's a Grigor Tatevatsi who was a theologian who lived in the 14th century. This one was, Moses Tatevatsi was a Catholicos in 1629. He was elected Catholicos in 1629. And he also refers to biblical sources to justify the practice of ordaining women deacons. He says, when Jesus endured his passion, these are his words, this is an exact translation. When Jesus endured his passion, that's when he suffered during Holy Week, women disciples followed him to the foot of the cross. And he says, when Jesus rose triumphantly from the tomb on Easter Sunday, he first appeared to women. He says, in the New Testament, there are women prophets like Anna. When Jesus was dedicated, when he was 40 days old, as was the custom of those days, a prophet called Anna, recognized Jesus to be the Messiah. Phoebe was a deacon, Priscilla was a teacher, Esther was a queen, Judith was a warrior, Deborah was a judge, and Tabitha, also known as Dorcas, in Acts chapter 10, was a social servant. She was a seamstress, and she made clothes for the people. And there were women benefactors mentioned in Luke chapter 8, verses 1 to 3. This is Catholicos Tatevatsi who mentions this. And he refers to Luke chapter 8, verses 1 and 3. If you read Luke 8, 1 to 3, it says, when Jesus traveled from town to town and village to village, proclaiming the gospel message, the 12 were with him, the 12 apostles, and also women who financed his ministry. These women, out of their means, supported Jesus' ministry. So, Catholicos Tatevatsi mentions all these biblical sources to justify the practice of ordaining women deacons. And Saint Gregory, the founder of the Armenian Apostolic Church, in his book entitled Teaching, says, not only by men, but also by holy women was the gospel preached throughout the world. So the gospel was preached throughout the world, according to Saint, not only by men, but also by holy women. In the year 2002, Archbishop Kevork Terian, the primate of Argentina, ordained Maria, a woman called Maria Oskul, to the diaconate, ordained her as a deacon. Diaconate is the office of a deacon. Okay? The office of a deacon is called diaconate in English. She was an immigrant from Turkey who had established her residence in Argentina, become an Argentine citizen, and Bishop Muradian ordained her in 2002. This is the last known ordination of an Armenian woman deacon. After this date, 2002, Not a single Armenian woman was ordained as a deacon. There were some orders of Armenian deacons that were famous. One was the Order of Saint Catherine in Julfa, near Isfahan, Iran. This order was founded in the 17th century by Takuhi and Hripsime. They were deacons. They were the founders of the Saint Catherine Order. They ran 2 schools and an orphanage, besides serving at the altar. The last deacon from that order was Elizabeth Israelian, who died in 1950. And she was the sister of Patriarch Kevork Terian of Jerusalem. Patriarch Kevork Terian died in Jerusalem in 1949. And I remember his funeral because I attended his funeral. Then there was the Kalfayan order in Istanbul, established in 1886. And the last time they ordained a woman deacon was in 1982, when Hripsime Sasunyan was ordained by Patriarch Shnor Kalustian. And there was also an order of Armenian deacons in Astrakhan. Astrakhan is in southern Russia. It's where the Volga River pours into the Caspian Sea. There was an Armenian community there, and there was an Armenian church called Sup Asfadazin, and that order, the Order of Armenian Deacons in Astrakhan, had 18 members. The other famous center for Armenian deacons was Tiflis, Georgia, where the women deacons in Georgia, in Tiflis, Georgia, were known for their musical skills. They were the ones who provided the music. They were the choir, so to speak, for the church in Julfa, in Tiflis. So this is a journey that took us from the 4th century down to modern times. And we traced the service of Armenian women deacons. Today, the women diaconate in the Armenian church has died because, I believe, 2 reasons. The church leaders in the 20th century have not supported and have not encouraged women deacons. No one has recruited women to serve as deacons. That's, I believe, the main reason. The other one, when we study about these women deacons, at the time of their ordination, all of them took the vow of celibacy. They vowed to remain celibate. They never married, never formed families. They devoted their entire life to the service of the church. As I observe Armenian churches, Apostolic, Catholic, Evangelical, it makes no difference. If you go to any Armenian church on any given Sunday, you'll find that more women are in attendance than men. Women outnumber men in Armenian churches. And it's a pity not to use their God-given talents. A way must be devised. A way must be devised where the talents, God-given talents of Armenian women could be used in the service of the church, the way it had been from the 4th century until the year 2002. I have some pictures that I want to show you of Armenian women deacons. In this one you see Patriarch Shnor Kalustian surrounded by women deacons of the Kalfayan order. You see they have a stole, each one has a stole and each one has a cross. This picture was taken in 1982. Here's another picture of the Kalfayan deacons. This is a picture of an Armenian deacon serving at St. Stephen's Church in Tiflis, Georgia. You can see her skull. This is a deacon in Istanbul, Turkey, presenting the chalice to the officiating priest at the time of the Badarak. And this is an ordination. The top one is an ordination of a woman deacon. You remember I said manuscript 39 from the 5th century says women deacons were ordained by bishops. And here you see a bishop ordaining a woman deacon. The woman deacon is kneeling before the bishop, and there is a there hired assisting her to stand up after the ordination. And this is the picture of Deacon Elizabeth Israelian, the last deacon of the St. Catherine order in Julfa, Isfahan. She died in 1944, and there are no more women deacons in Iran now. If you have any questions?
You indicated that the women deacons were all celibate. Are men deacons supposed to be celibate?
No. Men deacons, no. When deacons are ordained as priests, they can choose to be married priests or celibate priests. But all women deacons, at the time of their ordination, were obliged to take the vow of celibacy. And by the way, some of these women deacons came from wealthy families, like Sahagatuht. She came from a very wealthy family. And the first martyr of the Armenian church was a woman, Santuht. Santuht was the daughter of King Saadru of Armenia. When the Apostle Thaddeus came to Armenia, proclaiming the gospel, one of his converts was Santuht. She was the daughter of King Saadru of Armenia. Her father pressured her to give up her Christian faith. She refused, and she was finally martyred for her faith. She was executed. So she's the first martyr of the Armenian church, and the first martyr of the Armenian church was a woman. So women played a pivotal role in the history of the Armenian church, and it's a pity to see them excluded now. I believe they should be included in some way.